Welcome. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Welcome to the Missisquoi Valley School District Budget Informational Meeting. First thing we're going to do is the budget presentation. So welcome everyone, and then we will save questions for the end. As to board members, I'll just kind of call out who's going to be speaking to which slide. And then we'll kind of go through the slides one by one, and we'll hold off to questions for the end. Sounds good? All right, so slide. So this first slide will be introduced by our superintendent, Julie Reginald.
So we wanted to lead with just a few successes that we've had over the past year. Our local assessment that we take, which is a nationally normed assessment that we give several times a year in reading and math. Those reading assessments have shown increased reading results in all grades, which is really helpful, exciting news. The same for math, particularly they haven't increased in the lower elementary, but in grades 5 through 11, they've increased significantly, which was really great news. MVU middle school students outperformed the state average in math and science on our state test, which, given how the history of their performance it's over the past few years, it's been increasing, and so this is a wonderful trend that we're seeing. Behavioral incidents, although will always be a concern and a struggle in all of our schools, they are down this as of this last month by 25% overall across all our schools. And then we are continuing, and this is directly correlated to the news that you see a lot about reading scores, et cetera, is truancy across the country is impacting student performance, and in Vermont it's been significant. But we've been really focused on those students who are chronically truant for a significant amount of times, and while we still have some, we've made real inroads in the number of students who are absent more than 20 days, 30 days, 40 days. And we think that all of those make a big impact on student performance. It's such a correlation. So those are some positives we wanted to share.
All right, fantastic. Next slide, please. Elaine, if you would, slide 3 and 4.
Okay. So right here we're looking at an overview of our proposed budget. We'll go into further detail throughout the presentation. Our proposed budget is $50,956,879, which is a slight increase over last year, with a per pupil cost of $12,190. I'd like to point out that this is we've maintained all of our services as a service level budget, not we did not have to make any cuts. We're keeping our programming the way it was. Our biggest increases were the salary cost of living adjustment, insurance premiums, which is happening to everybody, and increased cost of special education between rising costs and number of students using those services. We were able to offset some of these increases with unfilled staff positions, central office positions, and supplies and software.
And those are cuts.
Those are cuts. So, with that being said, we do have some good news here. Our tax rates are going to be going down for all of the towns. So Franklin will see a reduction of 6 cents on their tax rate, a tax rate of $1.58. Which results in a savings of about $126 on a $200,000 homestead. Highgate will show a decrease of 11 cents with a rate of $1.41. So on a $200,000 homestead, it's a savings of $222. And Swanton will have a 4-cent decrease at $1.48. So their taxes on $200,000 homestead would decrease $83.
All right, next slide, please, and Curette.
So this slide is shows an average property tax bill increase, and it's a comparison between MVSD and the state. So in FY25, the state represented a 14% in their property tax increase, on average, whereas MVSD experienced 8%. And in FY26, the state is predicting a 6% increase in their property tax bill, whereas MVSD is showing us on average a 7% decrease. So if you look at the comparisons, MVSD has been conservative in with their budget, and as a result, the average property tax has been significantly lower than the state average.
Slide. Still you correct.
And continuing on with the state comparison, MVSD spends $2,000 less per student than the state average. Our district ranks 98 out of 122 Vermont districts and supervisory unions are spending. And MVSD spends less than 80% of districts and supervisory unions in our state.
Slide. So overall, as a comparison to last year, we are looking at between FY 25 and 26. The overall budget is increased about 4.2%. Again, the spending per student, we're looking at about a 2.89% increase. Just for context, the governor, when they originally put out at the beginning of the FY, they were targeting for districts to be below 6%. So we're coming in under 3% at the 2.8% increase on our per pupil spending. And again, you know, the main point is the average tax rate for FY25 is actually going down. We can answer questions to that later on as to why that is. That has a lot to do with how our students are weighted. And so that works to our advantage in terms of being able to drive down our costs. And again, very conservative budget that we were able to propose this year. So we're looking at on average about a 0.7 cents decrease on the average tax rate. Slide. And this is going to be Stephanie.
How can the taxes drop when the budget rises? Pressure off of taxes. The taxes are calculated from spending per student, and our student population is trending up. There's a higher ratio of students needing support increases. Our access to state and federal revenue sources. School spending has increased less than last year statewide, reducing the homestead yield and overall tax burden. The pressure on the budget. The rising student population means higher spending to maintain level services. Increasing ratio of students with greater support needs means additional spending to meet those needs. And state negotiated benefits for school faculty went up substantially.
Okay.
Slide. And we've taken several steps to control spending. We have eliminated a 1.8 full-time equivalent from central office for amount of $155,000. This reason is it's our district office is already far below the state average in personnel per student, but we found ways to further streamline our operations in order to offset increases elsewhere in the budget. We eliminated a 5.6 full-time equivalent from school positions for $375,000. Most of these were vacant positions that are no longer necessary because we found ways to fold those services and duties into already filled positions. And we have accessed additional revenue for special education. While more students with special needs does increase our overall expenses, revenue from state and federal programs also increase to offset the cost to our residents.
Megan, if you would.
So as you saw on the previous slide, one of the ongoing pressures facing the budget is our increasing ratio of students with greater support needs as well as a rising student population. Currently, our district is serving 1,802 students with 1,016 of them currently in poverty and 411 with special support needs. Slide. Combined, these students make up nearly 80% of our student body. So in order to continue meeting the needs of these students, we are proposing a level service budget. Slide. What this means is that right, I missed one. Yeah, that we as a board, we have decided that we would increase the budget slightly over last year in order to maintain the services that we are offering. So what you are seeing tonight is a budget that aligns, slide please, with our district goals of prioritizing student success, ensuring that we can retain and attract top quality personnel, as well as keeping our facilities as well maintained and efficient as possible.
Joanne?
And so from a survey, these are a couple statements that we pulled out from a survey that was done earlier prior to the budget creation and approval. So we surveyed and competitive pay and benefits to recruit and retain high quality employees. Over 80% felt it was either essential or important. And then in our capital investments to improve and maintain safe and healthy school facilities, again, we were over 75% of the survey came back saying that it was essential and important.
All right, slides. Peter, if you would.
All right, facilities, looking back on what we were able to do last year with the budget that was passed for us. So we're looking at the MVU roof. We were able to do the A-pod last year. If you can see on the picture, the top picture is MVU, and you can see the roofs there. The ones in black are the ones that we've done over the past 3 years. I believe the A-pod is the one that we're in now. So that roof just got done. So that was a good project, and we continue to try to get the MVU roof completed. In Swanton, the Babcock building roof was replaced, and in Highgate, we put in fire alarm system replacement and a security cameras installed in Franklin. So notable projects planned for fiscal year 26. So we were just talking about the MVU roof, the pod B, which ties those 3 pods together. You can see in the middle, which I believe encompasses the cafeteria and the administrative areas. And then Highgate roof is another big project that we will be doing also this year. And then I went over the top one, Swanton, very big project with HVAC and electrical. So all capital projects are being financed with our level funded budget, and also improvements for covered by leasing of equipment. So I know last year there was a lot of talk, we wanted to get some paving done. All of our schools, except for Highgate probably, definitely need to have some paving work done, MVU in particular. But MVU and Swanton schools both have stormwater construction projects that are scheduled to be done this year. So we need to get those done so we're not tearing up pavement after we're putting it in. So we're hoping to be able to do some paving projects in the upcoming years after the stormwater gets done.
Don, did you want to add
Yeah,
anything?
I would
on
just like to follow up and make a couple of comments. Having worked on facilities committee for over 20 years, I'm very pleased with what we are doing here. I think the taxpayers are getting a great return, a lot of things done for the money invested. Currently, it's Peter and Stephanie and I. We've had other members over the last 10 years. One of the things that's happened is the gentleman who does maintenance and make sure everything's not only done now, but plan for the future. In Franklin, Steve does a great job. And Jason Butler, who works at Swanton, MVU, and Highgate in a supervisory position, does amazing work. He saved us thousands of dollars by being creative and using and training his staff to do things that maybe previously were contracted. The other thing before I send it back to Rennick, we want to remind voters that as much as we'd like to see you at your town meetings or come in and cast your Australian ballot, if that's not possible, remember early vote is available. I just heard from our business manager, Laura, that the ballot should be available this week. So if you want to vote that way, please contact your town clerk and let them know that that's the way you wish to be involved, whichever way you may vote. That's certainly your choice. I also would say that early on when we talked about the budget and taxes, we tried to be sensitive not only to the needs of the students, but also the needs and wants of the taxpayers. And I believe our superintendent said it best, and I wish I could hold up that flyer, Julie, but you know, we are building a budget to meet the needs and lowering taxes. And that's something that most school districts aren't gonna be able to do this year. So I'm really pleased to be part of the team, and I think we've worked hard. And Rennick, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Don. So before we open up for questions, couple closing remarks. This presentation, we thought about it. It's a little bit shorter because we wanted to have the opportunity to have questions and have thorough discussions. I can say that one thing to keep in mind is that there's a lot of talk of what proposed changes are happening from the legislator. We spent a lot of time this year focusing on the fact that we still need to fund schools and we still need to have a budget that will allow us to meet the students' needs. So I think this budget does it. It's quite conservative. It maintains a lot of the services that we have that are working. And the biggest thing that this whole board has had in mind going into this year was to make sure that we are working towards a decrease towards the tax rate. And so I think we've managed to pull all three of those off. And I'll end the presentation, and if you want to help moderate some questions, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll take questions. All questions would please come to me and I will disperse them to the people. That way you're not crossfire to kind of keep things under control.
Sure.
So anybody have any questions on their budget presentation or budget?
Yvonne, Dan Rand, Town of Franklin. At the very beginning of the meeting, they talked about, I think it was Julia mentioning about the reading and math in the state of Vermont. I do believe that we are having difficulties in that area. Where do we stand in throughout the state of Vermont?
I can't tell you where we stand on the state assessment yet because they still haven't released, they're just releasing this week comparisons, and they have a system that doesn't allow us to directly compare to state averages. But we do have some data where I can say unofficially things like the middle school math scores are above state average. And so there are some places where we are, as a state, have done quite well. It's a new test. They changed when the test was given. So the statewide test is a little more difficult to compare. When I look at our local data, that assessment is nationally normed. And it really talks about like if students are reading substantially below or a little below or in the range to be performing at grade level. And more of our students are doing better on that assessment. And so that assessment, to me, is a little more dependable. We've been giving it for multiple years. Yeah.
Thank you.
More questions?
I do have a question.
Can you do one thing, please? Yvonne did it because he's used to me in Franklin. State your name when you get up and ask your question, please.
Yeah. Hi, Swinier, Town of Highgate. I'll start with the presentation Yvonne did. The 1.8 full-time equivalent in central office, were those unfilled? Where was that cut from? Was it a direct position that you had?
Yes, one was vacated last year, And we were able to, people once again picked up the extra work and made it work. And then we have another person who won't be returning.
Is it-
So currently filled, but they
Well,
won't be
what was
returning.
that position?
In technology.
Okay. Thank you.
More questions? Yvonne, you want, Matt, you got a question? I'd like somebody new, before we give somebody that's already asked. Yes, please.
Okay. My name is Matthew Rainville from Franklin. I don't see the page immediately, but I know the cost cutting, one of the points that you made, and I don't think it was the point that you just discussed, I think it had to do with the school, that you had some vacancies.
Yes.
But how are we handling those? I understand from a budget perspective, that's a great thing, perhaps, but how are you handling it from a workload perspective?
Oh, absolutely. We had some positions that we added, hoping we were gonna expand some programming or create a new program, and a couple of very difficult to fill positions where we've had to redistribute the work. So sometimes in special ed, for example, those positions are very difficult to fill. SLPs are very difficult to fill. So we've been creative with those, and we still have, in those positions, we have pretty statewide average within the norm caseloads and workloads for folks. So our team has worked specifically on that. We had a position we added in social studies, for example, at MVU, and it turned out they really didn't need the position after all. They restructured their course offerings to do that. Sometimes we expect pressures on the course of studies, and then it doesn't work out that way. So we were able to move some folks around. Sometimes a few folks chose not to return, so we were able to swap out some of those positions. But there are other positions out there that are, we didn't go through and cut more than we felt we could, because as Megan was talking about, a level service budget means that we're making cuts in areas that aren't going to impact students. We're not gonna be taking away things. We were hoping to expand some things, and for example, one of the positions that was added during COVID. So we've moved a step back from that.
Yvonne?
Yvonne Danrand, Town of Franklin. Speaking of which, how are we doing with recruiting students outside of our district?
We do have a few students who have, from the islands in particular. We always have a couple from Sheldon. I don't have those numbers with me now, but I can make sure you get them. We're pretty steady, but we haven't been recruiting more. But for example, when they had their 9th grade orientation, we had a number of students come from surrounding choice areas to choose MVU.
I think it was just over 40.
Is it?
So
Is that normal or average?
a little bit above average.
Oh, see, it's a better answer from Laura.
Did you hear the number?
Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay, just checking.
Any more questions?
Ronnie
I'm
Haskell has
looking
a
at
question.
technology to tell me that if they get a question online, please.
Let's see, brief description of the curriculum coordinator position and reasoning behind the near 20% salary increase in that line item.
There's a cost of living increase, but it's also, that's a salary that's offset with grant funding. Our curriculum director's salary is offset with grant funding every year with title funding, and so depending on what's available and what we need for other things, then we sometimes fund different portions of her salary with the grant funds versus the general fund. So that might explain what you're seeing.
Matthew Rainbow from Franklin. Getting back to kind of staffing, how are we doing on retention? Do we have a lot of turnover with teachers and admin in general? Just on average, how long do people stay?
We
Here
have,
at MVU?
here at MVU, actually, last year, what was the retention rate at MVU?
I think it's about 92%.
So it's been improving here. Because of where we're situated in the state, especially at the top of 89, we get a lot of brand new teachers graduating who live in Burlington and drive up to Swanton and MVU and stay for a few years and then either move back home to another state or move to another part of the state and will make a decision to change their employment. That typically happens within maybe a 3-year period. Not once we have folks 5-7 years, we don't typically have that kind of turnover. It has been a challenge around the state. A lot of people are leaving the profession. Teaching is a challenging profession, but we have actually, Bonnie has done a tremendous job of working with administrators, working with teachers, doing exit interviews and roundtables, and really trying to address what are the things that make people love their job and want to stay here. What can we do better and differently, and what do we what should we celebrate and continue to do? And that, I think, has helped a great deal. So I'll stop talking. I'll let you
No, I
answer.
just wanted to share that our MVU, specifically retention rate, increased 9% from FY24 to FY25.
It's good.
That is very good.
And do you want to elaborate on some of the challenges that we face in terms of hiring here in the district, just so people are aware?
Yeah, location is one of our biggest challenges. People coming from out of area or out of state housing is a challenge that we run into. You know, we are a lower paying district, and so that does have some impact when it comes to that. But we have done really well recruiting staff, and we started the year in probably a better position than we have in the last 3 to 4 years. And people are staying, and so we had an increase in retention in the district overall. MVU was the most significant in that.
Peter?
Yeah, just to add to that, so Matt, that's one thing, a few years back that we made a dedicated decision to try, we wanted to improve scores, improve learning in our district, and we saw that one of the big hindrance to that was teacher turnover, right? So we really looked hard at that, and as you can see, we have made some inroads to keeping teachers, getting them to stay longer. And what is it, if we get them to stay a certain amount of years, they usually
Yeah.
stay.
Usually if you stay 5.
Yeah.
The national average is 4.1 years, then you're likely to stay.
So that's, we're trying to incentivize the younger teachers, and we just went through another negotiation period, and they really love us, so I think they're gonna stay.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
So I actually want to go back to the question from online about the curriculum coordinator, and you've heard us speak a lot tonight about increasing performance and test scores and just making a better learning environment, and our curriculum coordinator is key to that. So as Laura said, the sources of the funding, there was also a decision supported by the board because of the incredible impact that this position has had on the district. It's a direct reflection on that role when we're seeing our numbers increase and new curriculum plans being put into place. We have a new math program, new reading programs that are already showing us positive results. So just to go back to that and give some more description about why that is the case.
Mr. Moderator, may I make a comment? I don't have a question. People asking about positions, one of the things that has pleased me immensely in recent years is our agriculture program. We have teachers who I believe are in a training program to get their
Yes, they're in the third
license.
year of their
And
apprenticeship program.
not that we don't like old folks, but it was nice to see some young people have an interest in agriculture and the things we do. And if you were at a board meeting here about 6 weeks ago, when you saw the students speak who were in FFA and went to the national convention, you know that that's a good investment in young people, even though all of them, or maybe many of them, won't even do agriculture in Franklin County, but there are many spin-offs, as we all know, from the traditional ag. So that was, that allowed us to add some positions and really focus on what is agriculture. And you all know probably far better than I do. It's not your grandfather's agriculture.
Mr. Maury,
Yes.
on the retention of staff, teachers in particular, I think the district tried to go local with a lot of the new hires. There's a difference. When you're from the area and you work here, you see those teachers at that school building on a Saturday morning. You see them donating their time to youth sports and this and that that's offered. It's a whole different meeting, but if we become a school district that the state wants to propose, you don't work. I really want the board to have those voices of us heard at that state level, that yes, we'll have a teacher, but a teacher's not going to be vested in a district of that size. And this district has done a lot of good work, and I was one that complained years ago, most of you can remember it, of that, because teachers weren't, they no longer did bus duty. Now they don't, it's not in their contract, but they're doing it because they care, and I think that's something that's gonna fall off the chart. And it's not budget related, but it is budget related.
If I could just comment, every time we get a teacher candidate that's qualified and a fit for us, that is an MVU graduate or a local and committed to this area, we really do feel that. We hear a lot that people come and say, well, I graduated and I want to give back to my school or to my home community, and I may live in Burlington now, but I grew up here. So we hear that more and more, and to me that's real celebration of the community in general, and we know it's a bonus.
And I will just add, we do have a lot of teachers that really care. I'm in Highgate, and one of the teachers from the kids' school, they pick them up in the morning, and they also do the bus route, and I know the kids, they really appreciate that. I think we have a good community that cares, and I can say there is a lot of proposed change from the legislator, but the voice that we do have, we are using it to try to maintain some sort of local control over what happens in our district. And we were at, myself, Dawn, and actually Julie and Laura, we're at a legislative breakfast actually earlier this week, right? We're trying to make sure that as they decide how they may change things, that they keep in mind that the education and the community that you have in Franklin County and, Franklin, Swanton, and Highgate is different than what's going to be in Chittenden County. And we don't necessarily want that, right? And so the voices that we do have, we will use them. And I know particularly that's something that I'm very big on, using that and leveraging that so that we can, again, keep the things that are working here. So I will make a point to keep doing that.
Yes.
Susan Hunter Swan. Do we have many children in the trades?
I don't have, we have an increased number of kids who are going to the tech center. At this meeting, Rennick was describing, we were talking about career and technical education, and 100 qualified kids apply to Northwestern Career and Technical Center every year, and they can take about 40. They turn away, excuse me, we send between 40 and 60 kids. They turn away about 100 every year because they don't have space or enough staff and capacity. So the desire for it in the state is huge. The local desire to expand it is big. We have increased the number of students from MVU that are going to Tech Center. We've expanded it to 10th grade, which is hard because that impacts some of our programming here, but we just know that for many kids, that is a real hook that will keep them engaged, and they'll end up with a high-paying career, right? And so, and they graduate with industry-recognized credentials and college credits, and it's very robust programming for them. And we have internships we do ourselves. We have work-based learning, apprenticeships and internships that we do ourselves. So we've really got quite a big investment, both during the school day and after school, in creating those opportunities for kids. On the other side of this wall, there's a career center program that was started by the after-school program to get students interested in what trades and other careers are out there. So it's one of the primary things that we do. So important.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Matthew.
Actually, I think I have a couple of questions just so I don't have to stand up again. One question is, you just triggered it. What is our dropout rate? I'm still surprised in this day and age when I hear that kids are dropping out of school because I think, what are you going to do? How are you going to support yourself? So the dropout rate is important. Also, there was something online just a few days ago about the rating of the schools, and I don't know exactly what the source was, so I don't know how reliable it was. They listed Montgomery, Franklin, and Swan, I think, as being the top schools. And then they listed each of the other schools in Franklin County, and MVU wasn't really high on that. And I'm not so concerned about where we are exactly today, but how are we as far as a progression? Are we getting better? Are we stagnant?
Yes.
And maybe stagnant is okay?
Yes to the getting better part.
Great.
So I haven't seen that. We just had a new annual snapshot come out. And so I went on my computer, not to be rude, but to see if I could find the answer to your question. I don't think they have dropout rate listed there. I think they have graduation rate. Our graduation rate is above state average. So, and there's different ways of calculating that. We work really hard, particularly around truancy, because a lot of chronically truant students are the students who will drop, right? And so that's something that we work very hard on. And so we're doing above the state when it comes to that. Although anybody who drops out is not a good thing. What I do find with what we did find recently with MVU and the list of high schools, we're about in the middle of the pack. And we used to be at the bottom of the pack. So the past few years, we've been in the 25th range out of over 50, almost 60 high schools in the state. So, we spend a lot less than other schools, and we have plenty of challenges that we work hard on instructionally, but I think we're making some good improvement overall.
I'll just kind of follow up on that because that was something I was very concerned with when I started here on the board. It's hard to measure, and because I've asked this question many times since I've been on the board. You can ask Julie, because there's so many different matrices that they use in terms of how they evaluate schools. One of the general ones, which we could debate the reliability of it. They have like the USA News Index, where if you just do a quick search, it gives a list of the schools. Of the 56, I believe, high schools, 2 or 3 years ago when they did it, so probably 2020, 2021, we were about 35th. And then the last time they did it back in, I think it was 23, 24, I want to say, we were up at about 26. So there has been, again, based on those matrix, which it's hard to say if they're always reliable because they look at different things, but there is improvement in MVU. There really is. And I would say the level of education that you're getting versus some of the schools like, Essex, Chittenden County, when you also factor in what we're spending, that's where you start to see that what we're providing, right? Like MVU is in the lower 25% of per spending per student. You have certain schools that were spending, $17,000, $18,000 per student, and still not vastly outperforming what our students are able to do here. So you also have to look at that in terms of, again, if we were able to add $15 million to our budget, what we would do with it, We're looking at about $50 million for this budget. I know some of the budgets, CVU, stuff like that, they're at like $100 million, right? And the number of students is not that different. So I think for what we have, we're doing a lot with. We have one of the few ag programs in the state. We have a fairly robust work-based learning program that we're offering. So I think for what we spend, I think we're getting a lot out of it, and we're offering a lot of different things. And we have some programs that have actually been recognized throughout the state. As Julie mentioned, the Catalyst program, which we just pioneered, which is like an internship program for students. So that's kind of my feeling is that the school is slowly and continually on the rise in terms of what we're offering.
Any other questions?
No, let Ty, you
No, you got one online.
got one online too? Go.
Yep.
Go.
I've been hearing a lot of confusion on how and what booster money can be spent. For example, football scoreboard, hockey, locker room improvements. Can you give any clarity to these given that the co-curricular are increasing?
Laura, I'll let you
Laura's
take that
favorite
one.
subject. Done a lot with that.
So he's not wrong. There is confusion oftentimes around the funding sources for different things that have to do with interscholastics and co-curriculars. It's something we've been trying to really work on identifying. I've spent a lot of time with the athletic director and some of the office staff and administration at MVU identifying what is provided out of the general fund budget for sports and how far that reaches. So for instance, the locker room improvements at the Highgate Arena, for instance, whose responsibility is that? How does the money have to flow? Who gets to make the decisions? Those kinds of things. So a lot of work has happened on those in the last couple of years. It's not perfect yet, but we are trying to make it consistent across sports as well, like looking at what we provide for hockey and what we provide for soccer, facilities that are needed, equipment that's needed, how many students we're serving, and things like that. I will say that one thing that is confusing for the public, and that is often a conversation that we have to have, is that when fundraising is done or funds are raised in the name of the school district, regardless of who is raising them, the school district, or who is assisting us in raising them, or who is involved, whether it's parent volunteers or an outside group or an advisor. The school district does need to be aware that those funds are being raised or what they're being used for, what the purpose is going to be, how they're going to be raised, when they're going to be raised, where the money's going to go. Has to follow all of our same rules because those funds do belong to the school district. They might have a specific purpose, and we want to encourage people to help us with funding some of those things, but we have a lot of rules we have to follow, and we need to make sure that the money is being used in an appropriate way. Oftentimes people reach out to me, they'll reach out to Julie, they'll reach out to Dan, they'll reach out to John asking for approval on things. We do have a formalized procedure for all of those activities that it can be found on our website. But if anyone has any specific questions, I don't know. The scoreboard I know was a tough conversation. There was some confusion there. We did end up getting some donations for scoreboards for field hockey from EEI as well as for football in the end. And I know we're working to get that up as soon as possible. So I guess the answer is that it's a work in progress, but we are very much working on identifying exactly what the budget will will accommodate versus boosters. And every single request is considered, reviewed by multiple administrators, and all the appropriate stakeholders, and decisions are made, and our processes are followed, I guess.
May I add to that?
Yes.
So to go back to the process itself, I think that is really important to make sure the public understands. There is a process and it is there so we avoid what happened with the football scoreboard for the latest example. It wasn't followed. There were costs associated with that scoreboard that people just weren't aware of, because why would they? But the district, the school is aware of what, we had to do electric work and structure, reinforcements, and all of that came to light once the process was followed. Unfortunately, that was after money had already started to be raised. So just want to stress again the importance of following the process. If you're not sure, reach out to any of your board members, reach out to central office. More than happy to assist in getting you the information you need so that we don't run into another situation like we did this fall. Because there's a lot that goes towards something that you might not be aware of, and so that is why we have these discussions as part of the process and all of the approvals, so that we make sure that you're raising enough money as well, so that the students aren't disappointed.
Exactly, because really in the end, we just want what the students need so they can enjoy their athletic events, interscholastics, whatever it is that students are raising money for. We just want to make sure that it's done right and they have what they need. And sometimes with planning, we can help out.
And really identifying what is a need for the program and what's required to operate the program versus what might be extra. I think that's what we really need to identify, because if it's necessary, it needs to be in the budget and the board needs to work on that, right? But if it's outside of that, it might be sweatshirts for a special game or something, then obviously that's something that some of these other fundraising priorities can go to.
Don, do you have a question? Or
I had one, now I have two, and I may have three, but I'll be brief, Mr. Moderator. I think one of the things, and I appreciate what Megan's saying and what Laura's saying, but I've been around long enough to know that if you think, and anybody in this room thinks back to when they were in high school, things got pretty loose. People would raise money, spend money on things, and the school was not involved. And the State Department of Education, when I first became a superintendent, they didn't really check on us on that. We're in a different age. I mean, every nickel, every penny, we have to account for. If the money comes in from volunteers, a donation from ECI or whatever, we need to account for that and report it. And I don't think that many times people think about that. Probably I wouldn't if I wasn't on a school board, because I call them the good old days, but there were a lot of things that we did, they were good, and they weren't illegal. They might not have been legal either, but we did them. But anyway, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. One of them was truancy. For about 25 years, Jeff Benet and I worked on truancy in Franklin County. And I remember when Julie was first fairly new as a superintendent, I questioned about what we were doing. When we got the numbers, I was really surprised, and pleasantly surprised. We can do better, and we are doing better. I'm particularly interested at the high school level, but I know it's at the kindergarten level too, and first grade. Comparatively, we're doing quite well, even in the state. We were over 90%, and there were people in some of the areas where they have money that aren't up to 90% of attendance. So we aren't where I'd like to see us, but we are moving in the right direction, getting students to school. If you were at last board meeting, one of the young men said he really looks forward to coming to school, and he was thinking of quitting school, but he got involved in the
Field studies.
Field studies program. So people here, I really think they're creative and trying to find ways to do it. But the first comment that I was going to make was, when Peter gave his report, and Peter does a great job chairing the facilities committee, you can see that we take pride in our buildings. Well, as much as I take pride that we retain teachers, I'm going to tell you, retaining maintenance people has been key. I remember when I was just on the MVU board, just at the high school board, we were short people and we were contracting with people through a third party. We have turned that around. Some of it's because we've increased salaries, but at the same time, with Jason's leadership and giving people some right to make decisions and having a little bit of authority, our maintenance is gone up 2 or 3 standards if you add a 5 scale. Yeah, really good. And to me, that's very important. Sure, the people that work with children are important, but keeping your building so it looks good and operates well and is inviting is, to me, equally important. And so I just don't want to have people think, well, yes, certainly we want to keep the teachers, want to get new teachers, want to get high quality teachers, we do. But we want to do the same with other people that work in this school. And we're doing that. We're doing that now. Laura and Jason have worked hard. And our committee was meeting weekly for a while, Peter. It seemed like it, but we're down to monthly. But if you own a building, you know that you don't ignore maintenance for 2, 3, 5 years. So, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Hopefully I won't have any more.
Thank you, Don.
To your point, Don, I think, and I know I've talked to Laura about this, with our budget, we're doing more with our facilities than a lot of surrounding schools around us, so, or districts, I should say. So, yeah, pretty proud. We've got a really good team that we're working with. So.
You take pride. You just talk with them. Our locker rooms here that we're done.
Yeah.
I've been told for like 5 years, we got all this regulation, this law, this whatever, we can't do it. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands. Jason was able to be creative. And then instead of contracting it out, the things they can do, eligible to do, they did. So
Combination.
they look at it with pride.
Mr. Moderator, I'll get back to the original question. Laura, you said one of something, an example. Just this week I heard a reason for a clutter in the arena was because boosters couldn't buy an extra storage cabinet for their jerseys. I don't know, that's out third person. I don't know if it was an excuse to not clean up a mess, but would a storage cabinet for supplies be a budget item or a booster item? Or could it be both?
It could be both, in my opinion, and what I don't know all of the information from the situation you're talking about, but in my opinion, putting a storage unit for our program at the arena, or it's like we cannot install a fixed asset at the arena because it doesn't belong to us. We could pay the arena to do it, but we can't do that because it doesn't belong to us, it's not our facility. Buying a piece of furniture to put there so that we can store our equipment appropriately is something that we would probably do for any of our programs. Is it consistent with what we do for the rest of the programs? Then we should do the same thing for hockey, would be my opinion. And then if it's necessary, then it should be funded with the budget. If it's not necessary, it's kind of a luxury thing. Maybe they want some fancy, thing that
just
heats
so we
and
don't have to
whatever.
take sticks on.
Yeah. Then that's an extra, right? And that might be something that boosters could help us support and raise money for, specifically for those kids. So it's really about need and consistency across the programs and following the process. My questions for that would be, can we please have a budget on how much the whole thing's gonna cost? Is there any electrical involved? Is there some other thing that we're not thinking about? Yeah.
If we might follow up on that, Mr. Moderator, I think people have to understand that our administrators, I don't believe we're against anything, and as a board, we aren't against a number of things that the community wants to do, or boosters or whatever. But there has to be, and Megan articulated it very well, there has to be a process. This is a big operation. And what might seem to somebody like favoritism, I mean, if I hear anything about sports, it's people think that hockey is favored over everybody else. But I'm sure there are times when people, hockey boosters think, for what they do, they don't get as much as they would like. But the process, and I was so pleased that in the last 2 years, we've kind of developed, I think, not a better process, but made it better known. Sometimes you have a process, and if the people don't understand it, then it probably isn't the greatest process. I think we've come a long way. That doesn't mean we're perfect, but I don't think anybody will be denied if they have the data. But you just can't walk in and say, I want this, I think it's gonna cost X number of dollars. We've been surprised sometimes on things. I mentioned electrical. You know, sometimes you get a great idea, but when you throw the electrical in, it costs as much as everything else.
I would say communication is key, Ty. If I don't
I
know,
don't doubt
if we
you.
don't know, we can't help, but I can tell you, I was in 3 meetings just last week trying to figure out ways to provide meals for kids on a bus for away games, making tough decisions between, can we do that and do these other things? How many meals can we provide? Can we also get the certain kind of bus? Can we, so oftentimes there is a little trading off that has to happen and decisions have to be made, but there were at least 4 or 5 people involved in those conversations trying to make those things happen just as recent as last week, so.
I just threw out that,
Yeah.
well, I had heard
Yeah,
a particular thing that I
Yeah.
heard this week. I had no skin in the game
Yeah.
by any means, but
I think it's really important to understand what is necessary to run a program. That's something I'm really trying to, what absolutely is necessary.
But Mr. Moderator, unless somebody else,
Can't see
I'd like to,
Yvonne has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll get back to you.
yeah, I just wanna respond to Todd.
Mr. Moderator, Yvonne Dandridge, Town of Franklin. Quick question, maybe a 2-part question. How much do we spend on transportation? And how much of that is sports related versus transporting kids from home to school, school to home?
So, sorry.
So
Go ahead, Laura.
So we spend a couple $1 million. I would say about 78% of that is to bring kids to and from school. I can give you exact numbers if you want me to pull them
That's
up.
fine.
Okay. But also some of what you see in the transportation line is other transportation that's outside of just to and from this school. So if you look at the transportation line in the budget, you'll see things like providing transportation for students that maybe can't take advantage of our normal school transportation, or they're having to be transported to other schools or other services outside of the district too. So all of that is in there, along with field trip transportation and athletic transportation is all in a transportation line when you look here. But you will see with our new online budget book that we're putting out, we will have a breakdown of all of those different kinds of transportation, and you will be able to drill down into each one, and that's being launched tomorrow online.
One last question.
It's available to us. It was going on the website tomorrow.
it's all here.
Is it there now?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
maybe.
not mobile friendly.
Which one? I can pull it up, yeah.
Just, are all schools in our district have the same starting time?
Pretty much.
Well,
I mean, the
that's
buses, the kids arrive within a window, but all staff is here from 7:30 to 3:30, and kids come in, it may be right at 7:30 in one school, it may be 7:40 in another, but it's within a window. For instance, at the end of the day, kids leave MVU first and then go to the elementaries.
Okay, in fairness, I've got Dawn a question, and I saw that one there. I'm gonna go with Dawn first, because
It's just a comment, Ty, and I don't wanna get into a sports battle, but I can only speak from Swanton. There are people in Swanton that if they like a sport and they know that a few $100s will let something happen, they're gonna give it, okay? But they may not like other sports and they're not gonna give us the money wrong. And so sometimes we get caught, not we the board, but the administration. Somebody says, yeah, they want a special bus to do something. I don't think it happens very often, but if somebody wants to do it, they can donate the money and fine. But somebody else may think, hey, they're getting favoritism. School district is letting them do it, but we can't do it. So those are some of the tricky things you deal with.
Communication.
thank you, Dawn. Okay, we have a question. Can you explain the approximately 300,000 overspending in the fiscal services the last 2 years? I guess that would be you, Laura.
So we have to borrow in anticipation of taxes every year. We never know what the rate we're going to pay is or the rate that we are now reinvesting that, so we also don't necessarily know when we're budgeting what the yield is going to be on the other side of it either. So we budget for an anticipated interest expenditure, and then on the revenue side, we anticipate a certain amount of revenue to offset that. we have been paying a much higher interest rate the last 2 years, but we've also been receiving a much higher interest rate and actually making somewhere in the ballpark of $150,000 to $175,000 off of the interest of our borrowing for anticipation taxes every year by reinvesting it. So that's what that is.
Thank you, Laura. Any other questions? Yes, Matthew?
Matthew Rainville from Franklin. This is my first
Sit
meeting.
down, you don't have to stand up.
I saved all my questions for tonight. But seriously, well, I'm thinking, one of the questions I had on here was, what is, something happened in expended fiscal year 2024. The numbers are so much bigger. Did I miss that at the beginning? I'm sorry, I was a few minutes late. The column for fiscal year 2024 expended.
You're right.
You're right. Compared to all the other columns.
You're right.
There's,
Hold on.
there's probably a really good explanation because it's the entire.
No, it's probably OpenGov. That's a problem with my report.
Oh, okay.
That was pulled today and it wasn't there yesterday. And I'm just noticing it, so I will have to publish another one, this column.
That makes sense.
Whoops.
Second question.
I apologize.
Okay.
I was
Very
focused,
good catch.
I was focused on 25 and 26.
So Laura, he's an accountant, that's why he
Yeah.
gets it.
Yeah. I should have looked over at that number too, and it was right when I brought it to you guys, so.
So, I know we're talking about the budget, and you said that you've done a really good job keeping the budget down, and that sounds great. But I know how much trouble we had last year passing a budget, and it wasn't just our town. And it wasn't just MVU, it was everywhere. What did you have to cut to get to where you were? Because we had, what, 3 votes?
We did.
What did you have to cut, and are you gonna have to cut in the same areas if people don't?
Are you talking last year or this current budget?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some of the things last year that we had to cut was we had a fairly sizable project in MVU for the parking lot, which we had to cut. After that round of cuts, we ended up spreading it around a little bit between some positions, a little less money in terms of just extra expenditures. So we just kind of equalized it out as best we could each round to try not to affect services. This year,
The Highgate roof.
The
Yeah.
Highgate-
And the Highgate roof.
yeah,
Patch it instead of doing it right.
yeah, this year, we're going into this budget trying to already build in as much cost savings as we can. I will say that I'm hoping the climate for the budget this year, I'm hoping is very different, right? Like, voters across the state voted last year and voted in November for an overall change to the system of how we fund schools, period. And the legislator is doing that. That is literally all they're going to be doing the next 4 or 5 months, is looking at how to fund education across the state so that we don't have these giant inequities that even if we were to slash $5 million from our budget, somebody else is gonna reap the benefit in another county under the current system, right? So they're trying to figure that out. I believe that the message has been heard. And my understanding is that right now, locally, we just need to make sure that we're funding our school. And voting down this budget would do nothing to change anything currently. That's just the reality, right? Because they're already reworking the process and how they're gonna do the system. So you could vote this down 3 times, the message has already been sent to Montpelier, it's been sent across the state. So I'm hoping people are understanding that this year and just like, okay, let's get through this year, see what the changes will be, and then we can deal with that. Whereas last year, I think a lot of people were just upset that property taxes were going up, period, you know? But I think that message has been sent, so I'm hoping that people don't think that there's any advantage to voting down already a conservative budget that has cost savings in it, right? Like, you know, we would have to deal with it if it came to pass, but I'm not sure there would be a benefit at all, really. It would just mean we'd have to go in and scrape more services.
Yeah.
I think that's the important distinction, you know, if it doesn't pass, we have to look at what we have. There's not much. So yeah, there's a chance that we're not going to be able to have a level service, that we're going to have to cut, because if we don't have the money to pay, we can't pay. So it's going to lead to some very difficult decisions that so far we have been lucky to an extent to avoid. You know, we haven't had to cut programs, we haven't had to cut things that directly impact our students, but there comes a point where that is the only option we have if the voters won't pay.
I think for me, I just want to say, and it's something we said Monday, I made the point to our legislative contingent that was there, that schools such as ours we spend in the bottom 25th percentile compared to all Vermont schools. And we're performing better, making those improvements. But the way the system is right now, and the way the tax rates are impacted by spending in Chittenden County and Windham County and other places, that it is schools such as ours that, you know, when our voters vote down and we have to cut, and higher spending districts just pass their budgets, and they're not cutting. They are cutting this year, and I think that's part of why we're seeing better tax rate information coming out from the state level. But, you know, we don't want to be in a position where we just keep cutting off our nose to spite our face here in our community and our kids get less, when we already spend much less than other schools, and much less below state average. And we need a system, and I too am nervous about things that they're talking about, but we do need something to change so that our kids are getting as much as others, and not at a ridiculous cost to the taxpayer.
I'm sorry, Brett, I saw Peter's first, I'll get you next.
So, to your question on what are we gonna cut? So, Rennie said it, it's like, most of what we cut last time was facilities, right? Don, Stephanie, and I aren't gonna let them cut facilities again because it's gonna hurt too much. We've got too many projects that need to get done, so we can't afford to cut facilities again. So, we've got a strong budget. We're lowering taxes. I'm hoping that the taxpayers will see that and support our budget. But yeah, we don't have a lot of places to cut anymore.
Brett?
Yeah, I just want to make the point that, you know, like we're getting into what could happen. I think he just asked the question of what was cut last year. This year, our taxes are going down. So we have a conservative budget. We're maintaining our services, and I would think the message is the tax rate is going down. I would hope that our voters will support that and pass this budget.
Yes.
Susan, when you say that taxes are going down,
The tax rate, yes.
they're going down from the extravagant where it was before. Also, like, especially people that are my age, they're kind of wondering why that parents don't feed the kids like they used to. And I'm thinking about, like, I'm recently retired, and we supposedly got a raise this year with Social Security, but actually I got less in my paycheck because my medical went up, and a lot less. So, you know, there's those issues for older people.
Yes, Don?
I don't wanna cut anybody off, but, you made a good point, and I don't know what the legislature's gonna do, but I'm not sure people understand, in fact, I'm not sure I probably understand it totally either, but because we have a statewide property tax, when other schools raise their budgets, it impacts our taxes. Last year was the biggest fiasco in building budgets for 40 years. The governor got out a little early and legislators and threw out numbers that just scared people to death. Laura, what in the end did we end up, 8%?
Yes.
And they were saying 18. I worked the polls. There were people that came to Swanton, my neighbors, people I see regularly, and they thought they were voting on an 18% budget increase because that's what the media picked up and you kept hearing and hearing and hearing. I'm not saying 8% was good, but in the times, the way things were going, it was probably one of the best, lowest increases in the state. And, you know, the good old days when Highgate voted on Highgate's budget and Highgate taxpayers paid for it, those days are gone. They've been gone for 20 years, and I don't think they're gonna come back on the new formula. So sometimes when we cut, and I agree with Peter, you know, we cut facilities, a roof, a parking lot. Keep our fingers crossed it didn't leak and the potholes didn't damage too many cars. But we keep putting those off. My daughter works in Chittenden County, as school administrator. They spent an extra $5 million. The people in our 3 towns helping pay for that.
Does that?
I just wanna give him a correct number for that. It's 45,099,802 is what that number should be. So I apologize, our new software had a little glitch, but it's right here.
Thank you.
Yeah, 45,099.
Rennick, you had something?
Does that somewhat answer your question? Yeah.
It's okay.
Well, my
I
take.
just wanted everyone here to be aware of the way some people think. And also, maybe for next meeting, while I'm talking, I was kind of hoping to get to know the people here.
I was
so
just gonna
it
say,
would've been
before I'm
nice.
done here, I want them to introduce themselves. Nobody's introduced themselves on the board.
And also, like, now when we're having questions, you can be heard easily. But when we were starting, probably because you were looking maybe this way, it was very hard to hear what you were saying.
Thank you, that's a great point.
That is confusing.
Good point.
All I'll say to your question is that, I think that's a state issue, right? Like Vermont is facing huge challenges, right? We have an aging population, which is more and more, we have less students and we have less people in the tax base, right? And so, like, what you're talking about is everyone's feeling that, and I think those are the things that they're trying to figure out. Once they figure out a way to properly fund education, they have other issues they have to get to, which is the healthcare costs, right? And then how do you pay for things, right? Because if the only way they're gonna do it is to continually tax, like, it hurts the people. So I feel your question, as far as what we can contribute, we've done all we can to kind of keep that cost low for the community members here. But the systems that support that have to change statewide in order to not like minimize that in terms of like healthcare costs and stuff like that. So it's sort of like my answer, if that helps a little bit.
I was just talking about mainly like Laura, it made me think when Laura mentioned kind of like, oh, well, we were hoping to feed the kids kind of thing. And I'm thinking, well, in my day, you know, the parents, you know,
Yeah.
fed their kids.
Yeah, and a big part of that affects us is that we have a lot of kids that don't have parents, right? Like there's, you know, at the poverty level we are here in the district, there's just a lot of kids who don't have parents.
Sorry to
Right,
interrupt.
it's true, right? And it's not, I have 3 kids, right? And I try to make sure they have lunch and stuff, but we have a lot of kids that don't. So there's some cases where I think it is the only meals they're getting, and I think there's other cases where, you know, maybe we wouldn't have to. And they are looking at that at the state level, whether or not they do away with that entire program. And so, it's a tough call, because we have big challenges here, and so a lot of them, you know, that's all they get, and so that's part of that. They should feed them.
I wanna stop and go to her question that we didn't introduce ourselves. And like starting that corner, introduce your name and your role. and go around the table.
Oh.
We'll introduce ourselves, Ty, afterwards. We'll just do this first.
Yeah, but how much is left of their term?
That's fine. And are they running again?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator.
Now you made me do math. I'm Stephanie Gagne, and I'm a school director from Swanton, and I have 2 more years left of my term.
I'm Peter Magnet. I'm serving from Franklin. My term is up. I am rerunning, so if you want your taxes to keep going down, vote for me.
Good luck.
Shameless.
Sounds like a politician.
I'm Joanne Johnston. I am from Franklin and I have 1 more year left.
I'm Don Collins. I live in Swanton. I've been on local school boards from Swanton to MVU to this board for 20 years. I'm running for re-election, and Peter's my campaign manager. And I have a competition.
My name is Pierre Bouchard, and I represent Franklin, and I have 2 years left on my term.
Elaine Nestor, I represent Highgate. I was appointed to the board this past year, so I am on the ballot to finish out the term this year. I don't know if your vote.
Hi, I am Rennick Darnell Martin from Highgate. I just finished up my 3-year term, so I'm on the ballot for another 3-year term, and I'm currently the vice chair of the board.
Megan Conley, I'm the rep from Swanton, and I have 1 year left of my term.
We miss Laura here.
I'm Laura McAllister. I'm the Director of Finance and Operations.
I'm Bonnie Moulton. I'm the Director of Human Resources.
And I'm Julie Reginald, Superintendent.
Adam Boothla, just tech support.
Not just. We'd be lost without tech.
I'm Tim Magnet, I'm your moderator, and guess running for moderator again, and I'm no relation to that guy. Would you like to introduce yourself? Start with Ty.
Ty Swanyer from Highgate, graduate of MVU, lived in Highgate 42 out of my 43 years. And
Future board member.
I still like being on this side of the table.
Susan Hunter, I went to MVU.
Matthew Rainville, I graduated from MVU. I was in the first class to go from grade 1 to 12 when MVU was started. I returned back to the area 10 years ago and very happy to be back, so I have lots of questions.
What was that graduating year? He's not doing it.
Yvonne?
Yvonne Danaran, town of Franklin.
Bill?
Phil Bouchard from Franklin, and I graduated the last class to graduate out of Franklin High School, so I never came to MTU.
Wow.
Well, that kind of tells you his age.
Would that be the class of 69, Phil? Would that be the class of 69?
70.
70.
That's right, it opened
was
in
a lot
all
last time.
70 here, that's true, yes.
Yeah. Missisquoi was supposed to be open for that fall, and it wasn't ready. So they delayed 1 year, so I missed out.
Does the name Ed Menkins mean anything to you? Ed Menkins?
No. Actually, I only went to Franklin 1 year. I used to go to St. Anne's in Swan.
Wow.
And they closed their doors at 69.
Hey, nobody wanted you.
How's that?
Said nobody wanted you.
Okay, yes, Matthew.
More of an observation than a question. Matthew Rainville from Franklin. When you talk about the facilities, I'm really glad that you brought that up because it's so important. I know Peter and Tim, you were here at the same time I was. Remember the buckets catching the rainwater because the roof was leaking and the school wasn't 12 years old yet. And so when you're talking about the new roofs, it's so important because that leads to so many bigger problems. I was a little surprised when I drove in tonight. I haven't been to the school in a long time. but the driveway really needs some work. And so when you're talking about the facilities,
Yeah.
I get it, we have to have the services for the kids, and that's the number one priority. But the buildings really cannot be neglected.
But the parking lot is very interesting, and I know I'm supposed to go to the moderator, but I'm going around though. If we couldn't do the park, we thought we were ready to do the parking lot, and we put it in the budget. But do we finally have our stormwater permits, so we can do?
We finally have bids awarded that
So-
we're not in control over, the state's doing it.
So what happens is, the days of locally saying we have money and we're gonna pay for parking lot, no, you aren't, you're gonna have to follow all these regulations. And why would we wanna pave the parking lot and then a year or two later dig it up in places for stormwater? So we're still working on that. But there again, people, and I saw this from the legislature, people believe that at the state level, you can make better decisions than the local folks, you know? And it's been a mess, it's been a mess. They weren't even close to putting out bid specs that were accurate. They've been dubbing around with it for about 5 years.
5 years?
5 years. And we're not the only people in that boat, but, so it's really tough. A comment, if I might, and then I'll probably have to keep quiet, talking too much, but, when I was a school administrator, and I got criticized for making this comment, so maybe I shouldn't make it. But I remember saying to the staff, which was not only teachers, but maintenance people, paraeducators, that when the public comes into your building, if your building is dirty and crummy and maintenance is low, they'd immediately see you as a failing, not doing a good job school.
Yeah.
And so as important as teachers are and all the other support staff, counselors, I want, as a school board member and administrator, I want my buildings to be as good as they possibly can. And I think that's the attitude that we have here now.
And I think you can go to any of our schools and be proud of the
Yep.
buildings and the facilities.
And we certainly don't want our roofs to leak. And that's why we need a new roof in Highgate and a new roof here. So I think it's pretty critical. I think we all know what happens when your roof leaks, besides catching water in a bucket.
Any other questions or comments? Ty?
Yeah, I'm still on the presentation. Highgate roof, doors and windows. What's the scope of that work? Is it the main building, subtract the addition, including the addition?
So the roof is gonna be the whole brick building.
Okay.
And I don't know the portion of doors, we do a certain amount of doors and windows every year. I know there was a section that we had to do.
It's the older section of the building, I don't,
Yeah.
the terminology that you guys use, I'm not sure exactly
Yeah.
which year it is, or.
The 73.
73 wing, yeah, maybe that's it. But we're gonna put insulation between the existing steel roof, it's a membrane TPO 20, and then we're gonna work on the fascia also.
Any other questions or comments?
Anybody else?
You're on, Ty.
Okay. In the online budget, there's projected for 2026, district-wide staff 34.28. Is that include? I guess what I'm asking is that how you budget a position? Is it somebody that goes to multiple schools, or is it all in central office?
No, district-wide just needs someone who serves all schools, so all of our psychologists are considered district-wide, our SLPs are considered district-wide. Yes, it also includes people at central office, but it's a lot more staff than that, anything that's shared.
Is there a breakdown on, or I guess a number on how many people work primarily in central office?
Yes. Off the top of my head.
Including admin assistants and tech.
Right, do you need administrators and admin assistants? I mean, for instance, we have people in our office, like Colleen, I'm sorry, who has an office in our in our building, but she's primarily in schools all the time.
No, I'm asking primary at central office.
You know the FT off the top of your head in central office?
I always have to count.
I know, count all the way around.
Sorry.
Go from room to room. and
15 people. Which is tricky, because even, the special ed directors are never in their office. They're in schools going to IEP meetings and doing that kind of work, and
Like Beth Ann Miller, the after-school program.
it's,
She has an office
she's
in
hardly
ours,
ever
but
there.
she's hardly ever there. She's always in the schools.
And just a little clarification on this question. I'm not asking for the typical, there's too many people there.
Right.
I'm asking for what we're hearing at the state level. I mean,
Wow.
Yeah,
you don't make,
We do know that we're staffed less than most school
Yes, we
districts in
are.
the state. We have
Yeah.
those
there's
numbers.
no,
Yeah.
that's,
It's
I
not
won't
where the
talk
savings
about
is. It's not where the savings is gonna be. You're right, Ty.
no, I don't know who's gonna do all that work in that 35,000 student school district. Just one superintendent. I'm sure that's all it will be.
I want that job.
Any more questions or comments?
Forget it.
Got another one, Ty?
Yeah, I do. I think now, I asked questions, fact-based questions. Now I'll speak opinion-based. I think adding the online option for the budget was needed. I know if the town of Highgate went without a annual report, there would be absolute uproar at the town level. Why you won't get it for the school district for the town of Highgate is simply because I don't believe there's enough people that care enough to inform themselves. For me, I think it's a poor decision. I would like to see the actual annual report be available with principals' reports in the whole works, even if it was to be requested.
We will print some and put them in the town offices.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
we
you.
have them ready as PDF for that reason.
Thank
It just won't be a bound book that's,
Right.
published like that, yeah.
But we will have some in the.
We can.
In three,
We can,
I think we should have some in the different towns available.
So, another opinion, I think Don said the good old days. I think I'm still stuck in some of those good old days. I'll probably beg to come back to this time in 5 years from now, if the state gets what they want. But I feel, and people I'm around also feel, they don't have a say at the table anymore. They also don't put themselves at the table anymore. But, and I don't believe it's the school board or the district that has put it there. It's the state and what their roles of school boards have become. I don't like it, and I never will. But like I said, I think I'll beg for it back in 5 years if they get what they want. Another opinion is, I can look up online every state employee's wages. I've asked for years about having it in our book. For some reason, we can't. I'm gonna be looking into how to request that information going forward, at least at an administrative role, with the administrative roles for the district. It's knowledge that if I can look up a sergeant of the police, a state police's wages, I should be able to look up my superintendent's wages. And sorry, Julie, I'm not singling you out.
It's every year, it's okay.
It's okay because Julie's only one superintendent, so that's pretty clear.
Yes. And there's not much you can do to change my opinion on that. And I think that's all I have for opinion based.
Thank you, Ty. Any other comments or questions?
For the closing statement. I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who came out and took the time to listen. Like Ty, appreciate your opinions. I have some differences in them. I think you can make as much change as you want. And the one thing for me just sitting on a school board seat is I don't think there's ever been a question or an email that we don't respond to, we don't try to get answers for. We don't always get it right, but we're trying at a local level. And I think all the board members here are doing the best they can to represent like that elected position and like fight for our needs. What happens at the state, you're right, there's a lot of unknowns. But to me, it's the same fight. Like, talk to your local legislators, see them, like, make your voice heard, so that you maintain like our local control. But I feel good about this budget in terms of what this board did, and where we are right now. I think it represents well the needs of the community and is fair. And so, hopefully, like that's the message that gets out to everyone. And just thank you to everyone to put in the work into this, and hopefully we get it through this time, and then we'll just have to wait and see kind of what next year looks like. You know, it's just where we are. So
I do think it'll be sad if we no longer have local school boards, because I like to think that we really do listen and we try to make changes based on situations, and we know a lot of people are struggling out there, and we talk about that in our meetings and how we can best serve our communities. And one thing that if we go to these huge districts that they're talking about, there will be no connection between Swanton and Highgate and Franklin. They'll all be kind of on their own in one big district. They won't have that, you know, camaraderie where we're all one working together. It'll be so large that we'll be just an outcast. There won't be, you know, sharing of things. And so I understand that change is needed, but that's a pretty big bite. So I'd still like to see local representation, so that, you know, we went to the same schools, right? You know, we kind of grew up together, and, you know, we know each other, maybe not well, but we all know each other. And it's going to be different when you're seeing people, unfamiliar faces, and really when you're talking 25 school board members for the whole state, it's going to be a political, you know, we joke here, but it'll be a political seat, and they'll have other motivations other than, I honestly feel, and all the board members I've worked with over the years, it's been the students that we focused on and want to see our communities thrive, because we know that communities thrive through good schools.
So Peter, everybody here that's concerned like you and I are, and everybody, call your legislators. They are gonna decide it. The governor has a proposal, it's very radical. I can tell you right now, I would bet my school district paycheck, but anyway, that is not gonna happen. That is not gonna happen. But it's a starting point, and there will be some changes. You know, I'm not saying this is an ideal one, but if you ended up in this county with 2 instead of 4 districts, I would personally support that. I would keep it like it is. But there are already other bills being introduced, and something will happen. But no, and I shouldn't be arrogant, but that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen because the legislators don't have the understanding. You saw yesterday, I mean, sitting there yesterday, fine folks, but they talk about how they're gonna choose the school board members, what's the financial thing gonna be, how you're gonna negotiate. I mean, they're in way over their heads when they said, well, they were gonna move it through this year. Well, they're gonna try to get it through the House this year. Then they'll get it to Senate. And sometimes the Senate doesn't cooperate just because they don't wanna cooperate, but they're working hard on their proposal. And it won't be quite like what comes out of the House. So I'm an optimist. Something's gonna happen, but we're not gonna be in a district of Burlington. Not gonna happen. Can't happen because we don't have the services. It just, there are too many things against it happening. It just can't happen. It's a good political discussion, but it's not gonna happen.
Mr. Moderator, I did have one more budget question.
Yes.
Now that this discussion got brought up. Laura, do you know what we pay currently for fees and dues to the VPA?
I should have looked at that because it gets asked every
The
year.
Vermont Principals Association?
Yes.
Not
Or
of
you
the-
mean the
do you mean the Vermont School Boards
School Boards
Association?
Association?
Or principals.
No, VPA with Jay Nichols.
Oh, the Principals Association. I don't, that's principals dues. I'm sure
Okay, I'll
we
get
can
that.
get that to you.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
It's not a line item?
It's not a lot
Sorry.
because
The dues aren't a line item? The principal?
But they're-
They're not alone,
they're
not by
not,
themselves,
there's
no.
lots of dues, different types of dues in that line item.
But they're the big one.
Yeah,
My question
the
is
numbers are typically smaller because there's so many principals. And then they receive funding through athletics, of course. They're the organization that has the,
The reason I asked is because Mr. Nichols has been very vocal on TV, and I don't believe he's supporting our opinion as a district. So, maybe if we had to change the titles, but if it was a big number, I'd change the title in our district, so Mr. Nichols' association didn't get so much money from our district. They would care about our opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ty. Any other questions or opinions?
Go vote.
yeah,
Go vote.
March 4th.
We're ready to adjourn then?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor of adjourning the information meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All right.